Welcome to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and today I'm joined by Patrick Boots, who is a graduate of Haddam-Killingworth High School and now a student at Middlesex Community College. Thanks for joining me today, Patrick.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Minkler. I'm really excited to be here as a guest on Middlesex Moments.
All right. Now tell us, how did you find Middlesex Community College? What brought you here?
Well, coming to MxCC actually straight out of high school, HK High School, where I went, was part of the MxCC High School Partnership Program. With my specialty in digital video production and audio media, sort of led directly to going to Middlesex because I had actually already received college credit in high school.
That's great. So you really got a jump start on your college education at HK. And which courses did you take at HK that got you that jump start?
Well, at HK, I had taken an Introduction to Digital Video Production class and an Electronic Engineering class, which contributed to the Middlesex program because a couple years ago they had got together and decided that these programs are similar enough, so let's see if we can get students to come be a part of the college experience in high school.
Okay. Now, what got you first interested in doing things like video and audio production? Was it just something maybe you grew up with, or how did you get interested in this field?
Well, as a child, I always thought that listening to the radio and watching the television was a bit of magic, because how is it that these characters and these people on the screen and people you hear, where are they? They don't live in this small box, so how is that actually happening? I knew it was some sort of technology, but to learn more in depth about how that technology worked really just piqued my interest.
And HK High School gave you that through the courses that you took, and did you have, were able to do some of this at home, and any of the things that you had at home, like on your computer or through some musical instruments maybe you had at home?
Well, you're right. HK High School, with its fully featured television studio, did largely contribute to that in my decision years, and it's one of the only high school programs in the country that has such a feature, so it was really quite convenient that Middlesex also offered that, and that's why the partnership existed. But even earlier and later on, doing stuff at home with audio production and music in a very musical household really did help pique my interest sort of toward radio specifically. Listening to music is really something I do on a daily basis, so I wanted to share that with others.
Okay. And do you yourself play an instrument or sing?
I did participate in music classes in school, but I'm not an instrumentalist myself, but I do know many people who are, and I do participate in the theater production in high school on the stage crew and with theater tech, so I do understand how lots of performance happens, but not myself.
Okay. So more sort of like, say, talking on the radio and sharing your love of music and your love of things that you're interested in with other people. And radio is a great way to do that.
Yeah, well, as you know, doing your Middlesex Moments show and as a communications person yourself, right?
That's right. Well, so yeah, I think we should let our listeners know, yeah, you and I share an awful lot in common. Also, I am a graduate of HK High School, but back in the dark ages when actually I first learned on black and white TV equipment. Oh my God, I feel old now. But we do share that in common, and a love of music and a love of doing things like this, doing radio and television programming. So if you fast forward then, you came to Middlesex Community College as a student, and wham, you're in this big Center for New Media that we have here. What was your first impression of the center?
Well, I was very lucky. In high school, I did get to see a preview of what the Center for New Media had produced with video and audio for their annual Arts and Media Festival. So as part of that partnership, we did keep in line with what they were producing and took a look and saw, as high school students, how can we get to that point? My actual media production teacher in high school, Mr. Lewis, who retired, in his retirement, actually became an adjunct at Middlesex during the Center for New Media. So we kept in contact, and he told me what Middlesex offered as well, and he promoted me to go. So in combination with all those things, I thought Middlesex was a really good fit, and it's local to me, so it was fairly convenient.
And Patrick, one of the things that always really intrigued me about this kind of technology when I was growing up and got into the field of media too was just how things work. I mean, I kind of love to take things apart and put them back together again. Was that an interest of yours when you were thinking about doing work in radio and TV?
It certainly was an interest of mine growing up. I was actually quite lucky. My father actually repairs and refurbishes record players and cassette tape decks and reel-to-reels. So I sort of got a first-hand experience learning how the inner mechanisms and parts of those components worked, which led very nicely into the broadcast engineering world, which is modular and scientific in its own way. But first understanding how a record player spins or how a tape deck reverses and ejects just made me understand some things in the radio world a little bit more. But I did get frazzled toward the later times because there's a lot of differences.
And I find it really great that you took an interest in what today we might call older technology. You reference tapes and records and all that, and and today everything is done digitally. It's a much different world today than it was when I was in school at your age.
I do have an appreciation for a lot of the new advances in technology, especially what we do have to access with the Center for New Media, all nonlinear editing computers, digital music production suites, editing on the fly, exporting. You can have it to the client by the next day. That all didn't exist way back when, and I know that. So growing up a little spoiled with the technology, but also growing up in a household where we didn't throw out records and replace them with the same exact album on CD. We kept listening to them, kept working on the deck. So living sort of hybrid in a way with the older technology, and in a way, as I'm old-fashioned myself, in many respects, I deal with computers with the MxCC Computer Club. I'm the older computer specialist there, so maybe that rubbed off on me that way.
I guess so. I like what you described as a hybrid environment. I think I was fascinated to hear. I think last year, vinyl records outsold CDs for the first time in like almost 30, 35 years, something like that. People want that sort of tangible, visceral feel of their music nowadays.
It's definitely coming back with the nostalgia factor. You're starting to see records being sold at Barnes& Noble, FYE, Best Buy, all these stores which 30 years ago said we don't want to do this old stuff anymore. CDs are new and digital, but they see the market is still there, and some people do argue that vinyl records have a higher type of fidelity or a warmer sound, and although I can't necessarily hear some of the difference sometimes, it does have a tangible medium, which I do appreciate.
And you certainly miss having, 12 inches by 12 inches of artwork to look at. I think that was something that got kind of lost even going to a CD, just being much smaller. And then now, of course, just, looking at it on screen somehow, losing that touch. But your love for music, you said you really were interested in radio in particular because of your love of music, and you listen to music a lot and sharing that with others. But you've kind of taken that interest to a different level. Let's talk about your radio station.
Well, okay, so I actually have been listening to the radio, like you said, for basically my whole life, and I sort of felt dissatisfied with commercial radio. Commercial radio includes many advertisements, as we know, but even in recent years, they've been trying to squeeze more and more in the hour. And with an extensive music collection myself, I thought that possibly I could make a difference. Also working with other college students at other college radio stations, receiving their advice and technical specifications, I started my own radio station, Hacker Airwaves FM 87.7, right here in Middletown over the air. Now, with the federal regulations of the government, only certain classes of radio stations are allowed on the air. So I did have to go through a licensing process 2 years ago, and luckily we got the low power FM license for the lower part of the band. So that's why I'm on FM 87.7, the first spot on the dial.
All right. And what kinds of programming do you have on your radio station?
Well, it's an independent public radio station. So that means that we basically are a sort of free-form format with student-produced work now with Middlesex and music that I have provided. I mainly enjoy the 60s, 70s, and 80s music. Some newer stuff thrown in, some older stuff thrown in. I'm not that picky in that respect, so I do include a lot of that. We have talk programming, other types of international programming, as well as PSAs and jingles and that sort of stuff that we've built over the years.
And have you gotten any feedback from any listeners have enjoyed the programs that you have to offer?
I certainly have received some feedback from listeners. In addition to the over-the-air signal in Middletown and Middlefield, I also set up an online streaming service for the station to see if we can get people outside of the Middletown region to listen and even international. So, with some friends of mine out west and in the south, I got their opinions and they played them for their friends. And we got lots of good comments from the older age bracket crowd because naturally the 60s, 70s, and 80s music is what they most enjoy. And to have a commercial-free platform, I think, is what they were looking for as well.
Now, you brought this interest to the college as a student at Middlesex Community College in bringing back a radio and podcast club here. And let's talk about what your vision is for that club and what you hope to achieve with it.
Well, coming into Middlesex, I knew that they had a strong digital media program, the Center for New Media, of course, but I didn't see that they had an active college radio station. At this time, I was setting up my own station, so I felt that there's no use competing if they had already had plans, so let's work together and see if we can make something good out of this. In our backyard, we have WESU FM 88.1, which is a great station as well, so we've also been working with them. But seeing that they didn't have a college radio station really did interest me, and actually Laura Kruger, the chair of the MxCC Foundation, I was in contact with her, and as a media student herself, she described that they did actually have a radio production club organization in when she was at school in the early days. So she had given me some information, and Professor John Schaefer, the coordinator of the media program, had given me some older documents. And they actually had, at one time, requested the construction permit for a radio station, but it didn't end up going through, so I figured I would help and share my frequency with them.
Great. And I think also because it is, labeled as a radio podcast club, anything that we produce can be put on the internet as well, available for people at later listening times and all that. But I think what's really cool is sort of taking this integrative approach with, you running a separate private, or as you said, what did you call it? A private public radio station? Is that what you called it?
An independent public radio
okay,
station.
Sorry about that. Running your own independent public radio station together with the college's ability to, go on the internet and this radio show here, which is on local radio station WLAS WMRD. And I think we've talked about integrating student voice more and more on this show here. And what are some of the ways that, we've talked about what that can look like?
Well, to listeners of the show that may be tuning in every week to WLAS WMRD, usually hear Dr. Minkler's voice. But with the radio podcast organization, we really do want to encourage some other issues that students may be facing. So in collaboration with Dr. Minkler, some students will be producing episodes of Middlesex Moments to air in the rerun slots of Middlesex Moments on WLAS WMRD. To sort of focus on issues that affect students interviewing other students, possibly featuring some student-produced music from our media program, and to really open up the doors, not just as a talk format show, which Dr. Minkler does excellently, but to a show that students can have some control over and share that time slot on the radio.
Yeah, and I'm really thrilled that we're going to be able to do this and open this up. And I know we've already talked to some of your fellow students who are interested in doing some of that type of programming, like you said, original music or talk features that could talk about student issues or feature faculty and staff at the college. But, what a great way to expand the reach of this college and what you all as students are doing. It's a fantastic opportunity to share about this college.
I thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. I know that MxCC has this very good working relationship with WLAS WMRD, and they've done lots of stuff for the community, so I think it's really something great.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, And I'm joined today by my guest, Patrick Boots, who's a student at Middlesex Community College in the Digital Media Production Program. And Patrick, let's talk a little bit more about the courses you're taking this semester at the college. Let's start with television studio production. That's something that we were talking about before the break. What happens in a class like that?
Right, so for listeners who don't know, our MxCC Digital Media Production degree actually has certain specializations that students can choose to take. So myself, I'm actually doing a combined specialization in news and sports video production and audio and music. So for television studio production, it's taught by Professor Rich Lenosi, who's the coordinator of the department. It involves aspects of live studio production in a television news and talk show format where students produce, script, go out and make news segments and actually live to tape produce a cable talk show, a video edition of Middlesex Moments with Dr. Minkler. So seeing that class and the products that they've made throughout the years, especially like I had mentioned in high school, we actually watched a Middlesex Moments that the television studio production class had produced. Prepared me to sort of expect what sort of moves I had to master to be in this class. So this semester, we're currently learning the studio equipment and getting our first production meeting ready for the video edition for spring 2022.
Okay. And because you did this stuff in high school, this has to seem like old hat to you in a lot of ways, isn't it? It's familiar territory, familiar equipment.
In a lot of ways, it is very familiar to what I did in high school, but there are minute differences for the studio that Middlesex has and the studio that HK had. For example, the Center for New Media just got a brand new character generator for superimposed titles and graphics, and even as 3D. So I had to learn how to use that because it was much different than the standard old 2D version that I already knew. And there's also the studio cameras and the video switcher, which are more or less the same, but did happen to be a different model. So it's a learning experience for everyone, but it did help that I had some sort of background with HK.
Yeah, and even if all the equipment was exactly the same, the point too is that you're learning how to use this equipment and work together as a team with people, maybe you never met before, right? You're a production
Exactly.
team. Yeah. So how important is it to be a really tight knit, well-oiled team when you're working in television and radio production?
Well, in the communications world, you really do have to be collaborative. There's no project that you've ever seen that only ever had one person working on it. Even having one camera and one reporter for a news package, there's always going to be a photographer which handles the visual aspects and the reporter which has the script, the questions, and then they handle the editing and finalization, but it's always a collaborative effort. So in the radio and television world, you really do want to be personable, make those connections, and it really is who you know to get you farther in the media world.
I would agree with that for sure. And you said that you're also, as part of the digital media production program, one of the specialty areas you're working on is audio and music production, and you're taking a couple of classes in that track right now. And describe those two classes for our listeners.
Right, so the second semester path for audio and music includes an introduction to audio production class, which right now is being taught by Professor John Schaefer. And that goes over the basics of recording with the digital audio workstation, types of microphones and how they affect the type of sound you hear, and basically good recording practices like speaking at a good volume, consistent timing, mixing, so if you hear voice over a music track to make sure it's not overly loud or soft. So that's what the audio production class, but the Introduction to Electronic Music class, which I'm also taking, is basically that toward another step. It does handle the digital audio workstation, but it uses an advanced program called Pro Tools made by Avid, which is what the industry uses to professionally mix music for film and media. So learning the electronic music digital audio workstation really does go hand in hand with the audio production class. Later on in that class, we'll also be learning MIDI instruments and sequencing music and removing expletive words and all that fun stuff, which is more specific toward music.
Are any of your classmates or you performing music in this class?
There actually are a variety of students in the electronic music class who are performers themselves. Some of them have already recorded some music and posted it online on platforms like SoundCloud and Spotify to sort of get their foot in the door with both production of music and performance. And we did go over and have a little demonstration. A student had played the electric guitar that we have in the music production suite and sort of showed us that that was sort of his idea for his upcoming project. Instead of using a canned piece of music, he was just going to create his own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So,
Well, certainly if you have the talent.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, for me playing the guitar, forget it. It'll just be a lot of noise. So you'd be editing out almost all of it. So what are some of the classes that you would look forward to taking as part of this program, like next semester or the semester after that? What are some of the more advanced courses that the college offers?
Well, in the news and sports specialty, there is a broadcast journalism workshop class, which I actually had the chance to sit in on last semester as part of my work study agreement with the Center for New Media. And that was actually taught by the executive producer at Channel 3 News. So it was really enriching to sort of see that even at the preliminary level. So I'm excited to take that class next semester. It's like television studio production 2.0.
Okay. So you mentioned that you're a student worker in the department. What kind of work does the department have you doing?
Well, I work mainly with the media operations specialist, Mr. Todd Levesque, and we help manage the equipment reservation and checkout system. We have a specialized system just for the Center for New Media where students can reserve cameras, microphones, other accessories, as well as tutoring and studio facility time. So we know that not everyone has all this expensive editing software and equipment at home, so we keep the lab hours open and the studios available for checkout so students can create a quality production. So I do a lot of work with him on that system, as well as making sure all the cameras are packed up nice and tight with the proper materials, creating promotional advertisements, videos, and documents, helping the teachers with their classes, like I did with the broadcast journalism workshop, as well as just making sure that the Center for New Media cogs in the clock are turning nice and smoothly.
There you go. But I think that's an important point you made too, is that the college has all of these facilities ready to go for the students. So, if you come to Middlesex and you're interested in this field, you don't have to have all this, all this equipment at your own home to make this work. We have that here for you, which is important to know. Of course, if you do have it, then you can play with this stuff a lot more. So one of the things you mentioned earlier in the show that got you interested in Middlesex Community College in the first place when you were in high school is that you attended our Arts and Media Festival, which usually comes up in the month of May every year. And maybe if you could describe that a little more for our listeners, from a student's point of view, what do you see when you approach the Arts and Media Festival as a viewer and as a student?
Well, coming to the Arts and Media Festival, especially as a high school student, was really like a playground of all these art pieces of artwork and digital media as well. A student-produced work on the big screen at that time. We had visited Chapman Hall, the multi-purpose room, so there's a big movie screen that we watched all the student-produced video work on, and hearing the sound in that room is just like being in a movie theater, as well as seeing the virtual reality demonstration with Professor Rick Erickson and the physical pieces of artwork and photography that they had on display. It really was a really neat experience. So to be able to now be a student and be a part of that and creating some of that cool stuff really did inspire me.
So in addition to all the work that you're doing in the digital media production program and having your own independent public radio station and being part of a radio and podcast club, already that's an awful lot. And you're taking 4 classes at the college. You're also involved in the Student Senate, which is our student government association. What attracted you to being a student senator?
Well, to be a president or representative of a club on campus like the Radio Podcast Club does involve visiting the Student Senate to be able to have a voting right and to receive your initial funds. So upon learning that, I volunteered to be the radio podcast representative, And then I went to this Senate meeting, and I really did like what they were doing. They were organizing these events, purchasing things, and getting them ready for the Winterfest and the fall dance, and a drive-in movie theater in the parking lot, and it seemed like lots of fun. So now, having going to these weekly meetings with the Senate, that actually you don't have to be a club representative to go to. Any student on campus who's interested can visit and speak with Janet Klink, the director of student activities, and she has been an excellent help in getting our club back up and started, recommending certain purchases and things that we could use. And being a senator, I think, has really increased the value of my college experience.
Yeah, I think it's so important for college students to be involved at the campuses that they are students at, and you really exemplify what it means to be involved. I really do. I admire you for your commitment and the time that you spend working with your fellow students and your teachers and people like me to make Middlesex a better place for all of us. And I was really struck by the Winterfest, the dance that we held. So just describe that real quick. We actually had over 100 students and faculty and staff at this dance back in December.
We were very lucky this past winter. The Student Activities Office and Senate, we didn't think that we maybe could even hold a dance type event. But luckily the planets aligned in such a way where we could, and students really were interested. Unfortunately, many students, including myself, lost out on some of those types of events during their last years of high school with the ongoing situation. So all of Senate unanimously agreed to provide that for the students now. So and like you said, over 100 students were at that dance, and I heard that they all had a great time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think we're looking forward to the spring dance that we're hosting in the middle of April. So Patrick, in the brief amount of time we have left, if you were to meet a student, maybe a little bit like yourself, a student still in high school who is interested in going to college and learning more about the media profession, how would you advise them about a choice of college, whether that's Middlesex or elsewhere?
Well, I would certainly look into the media programs that all of your available options are hosting. If you're a high school student looking to go into media, Middlesex, especially if you're in the Middletown region or Greater Connecticut, is an excellent resource to the media production type of facility that we offer and production experience. And it is a 2-year program. So many students do and are planning to transfer to a higher institution college after their time at Middlesex. And in some ways, we've been told that they've been accelerated because Middlesex offers that earlier.
Well, Patrick Boots, a graduate of Haddam-Killingworth High School and now a student leader at Middlesex Community College, thank you for joining me today on Middlesex Moments.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Minkler.
And many thanks to all of our listeners for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, please visit us in person and wear your face mask if you do. Our main campus is at 100 Training Hill Road here in Middletown. Or you can visit us at our Meriden Center located at Platt High School, where we offer afternoon and evening classes 4 days a week. And of course, you can visit us online 24/7 at MxCC.edu. For everybody at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we'll see you next week.